I'm no stranger to procrastination. I've procrastinated a lot. But here's what I call it, and this is going to be weird. I call it strategic procrastination. That's something I do to this day still. So there's like a quick story. So there was this class that I took. I'd say second second year, I believe, second year, second semester in college. It was a psychology class. I'm not gonna name what kind of class it was, but it was a psychology class. And what I like to do, I'll explain what I like to do, um, how I prioritize my schedule after the story. So I knew that the test, like after taking a few tests, I knew like how like the tests were. So I knew how much time I needed to study for it, and I knew like I had like an A in the class, like 98% or something. And the final was coming up. That was the only class I had for that day, but it was 2 hours. The final was like 60 questions, and you had 2 hours to complete it. I literally woke up that morning. I didn't study at all. And I went to the bus. I was on my way to school. And I studied on the bus right there. And I did that on purpose. It's not like I forgot to study or I'm like, oh, I got to study right now. I did that on purpose because I knew that no matter what, I was going to pass that class. It wasn't not necessarily pass that class. I knew I was going to get at least an A on that final test just by studying on the bus ride. So that like hour-long bus ride, I come into class. I was like, the tests were already like starting to pass out. So I was like maybe like 2 minutes late, but like it was nothing like major. So I get in my seat. I get my test. And let's say the test started at 10 o'clock. So the test starts. I kid you not, I got up, finished the test, and turned it in at 10:15. 15 minutes later, and you're supposed to have a 2-hour time limit. I got 100%, and it only took me 15 minutes to take the test. It was that simple. I basically took a 3-hour bus ride, an hour and a half to school, and an hour and a half out of school, just to take a final for 15 minutes. That's essentially what it was. I knew the test. That's the thing, though. Like, you kind of know how a class is going to be like. So, for example, I'm going to use my phone for this. So, I'm going to explain my schedule for this semester and then last semester, if it's still available. I think they took it out, but I think I will remember it. So here's how I do it. So let's say I'm taking 5 classes, right? So I know I'm taking 6, but I'm gonna take like the like PE class. It's like weight training class. I'll take that out because that's not necessarily studying for anything. It's just like physical activity. So I'll take that out. So here are my classes. So I have counseling. It's individual and group counseling. I have a marketing class because I wanted to get out of the constant like psychology classes. I wanted to like branch out to different classes. So I have marketing. I have research methods for psychology. I have family therapy dynamics for psychology. And then analysis of behavior for psychology. So those 5 classes, right? So my effort or my ability for each of these classes are all 20%. 20% times 5 is 100. So I give these classes equal time. So each of them have 20%. So the first day I had the marketing class and the family therapy dynamics class. So I went to the marketing class, and after like the syllabus, after like how the class was going to be. I came out of that class, I was like, I don't think this is going to be that difficult of a class. So if it's not going to be that difficult, I changed the percent from 20% to 10%. So now I have this 10% just sitting here, just waiting. So, and then I went to the family therapy dynamics class, and I kind of had the same feeling. I feel like it's not even going to be that bad of a class. I didn't take it down to 10%, but I took it down to 15%. So now I have 15% left, like open in the tank. And I'll have to see how my other classes are to really put those percentages back in. So one class might have 40%. So I put more time into that class because it's going to be more difficult than the other class. Because if it's like an easier class, like I wouldn't put the same effort that I have, or same time, like my attention and my time for that class the same as another class that I have that is way more challenging and more difficult, that I need to actually like look into and like see like, okay, I gotta study more and I gotta actually do well. So that's just the like initial like evaluation of my schedule. So the real like percentages happen after the very first test. So after the first test, I kind of get a feel for it. And usually in psychology, you do a lot of multiple choice tests. And I'm like, every time I see a multiple choice, I'm like, so it's literally like the final that I took before, that only took 15 minutes because it's multiple choice. It's not really difficult. But some multiple choices are difficult. So, but it all depends on the first test. If I did really well on the first test and I felt like it was easy, I'm going to spend less time and focus on that class. If I had a class where let's say I didn't do so well and like some of the questions stumped me, I didn't know, then I'll spend more time on that class. And the percentages always change based on what happened. So let's say like a project is coming up for this class. So let's say marketing, right? That I put 10% right now. Let's say a project's coming up for that marketing class. So I'm going to raise that percentage up because project's going to be more points towards your grade, and I'm going to have to spend more time on it. So that's essentially how I work with my schedule. But I'm going to go to last semester because I finished last semester. So I have 5 classes. I had a child development class, which was actually surprisingly one of the better classes I had that semester. The semester wasn't really that like interesting. Probably my least favorite semester of college, to be honest, last semester. But that was a more interesting class. So I really gave it like, for the final for that class, I studied the same. I honestly studied like the bus ride to school. And like I think I had a class before that, so I studied a little bit in that class. And so I would say I gave this class like 15%. So it dropped down from 20 to 15. Then I had counseling, so counseling theories. And this was like a lecture hall class. So if for those in middle or high school, if you don't know what a lecture hall class is, basically a huge classroom. It's like at least like 140 students in one classroom. So just think of a big think of like a small auditorium or just a really big classroom, essentially. And that's what a lecture hall is. So this is a lecture hall, and this was on Saturday, and it always rained on Saturday. I don't know why. This was in the fall/spring. It was spring semester. And it would always rain on Saturdays, but we started to show up, and the buses were really slow. But I knew I had to spend more time on this class. One, I didn't get the book which I knew I wasn't gonna need. And I know I didn't buy any book like last semester. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, actually, I bought one because I needed one page. That's literally, I only used one page for a book. But this semester I already have a book. But anyways, so I knew I needed to spend more time. So I put that 5% that I took out of child development and into counseling. So counseling was the 25%. Then I had statistics. And this was, I would say, a walk in the park. So that was immediately dropped down to 10%. Like, I knew I was going to have no problems. I took statistics before, but not like psychology wise, but it was just pretty straightforward. There was like no challenging things in that class at all. So that was just dropped down to 10%. Then I had abnormal psychology. That wasn't necessarily anything either. It was another kind of interesting class. It was like the last class I had, but like it had some interesting things in it. So I'd say I may have given that I would say that stays 20%. I'd say that class stays 20%. And the last class I had was interpersonal relationships, which I probably got the lowest grade on, just because like how my papers were. It's like you had to like write about like your past relationships and whatnot, and it's like I couldn't really write much because I was never really involved in relationships, so I can't necessarily write something really detailed. So there was always stuff missing out and I'd miss points. So I gave that more attention. So I gave that 30%. So it ended with child development 15%, counseling 25%, statistics 10%, abnormal psychology 20%, and interpersonal relationships as a 30%. So you could see how I prioritize my classes. So I made sure that the classes that were important, I spent more time on it. The easier classes, I spent less time on it. It's pretty straightforward. But that's what I mean by strategic procrastination. So if